At 1:23 in the morning, thousands of people were jolted awake by what sounded like thunder. But there were no storm clouds, no rain. Windows rattled in their frames. Car alarms screamed in parking lots. People stumbled out of bed, confused and disoriented. Those who looked outside saw something impossible. The sky was glowing, blue at first, then purple, then colors that seemed to shimmer and dance. A pillar of light stretched upward from the massive industrial complex just outside their city, visible for miles in every direction. Neighbors stepped onto their balconies, calling to each other. "Do you see this?" Some grabbed cameras. Others just stared, mesmerized. One man later described it as the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. Within hours, an invisible threat would begin spreading through the streets, the parks, the homes. It would seep into the soil, the water, the air itself. And the people watching the light show had no idea they were staring at their own doom. Most of them wouldn't understand what they were seeing until much later. When the sun rose that morning, the city looked completely normal. Parents made breakfast for their children. Couples discussed their weekend plans. The weather was perfect, sunny, mild, the kind of spring day that makes everyone want to be outside. At the local playground, children climbed jungle gyms and played in sandboxes. Their mothers chatted on nearby benches, making plans for coffee later in the week. A wedding was scheduled for that afternoon. The bride and groom posed for photographs by the river, the bride's white dress brilliant in the morning light. Guests began arriving, dressed in their finest clothes. Near the construction site of a new amusement park, teenagers gathered to admire the bright yellow Ferris wheel that was supposed to open the next month. They talked about being the first ones to ride it, but at the hospital, something strange was happening. Firefighters had started arriving in the early morning hours, dozens of them, all with the same bizarre symptoms: vomiting, severe headaches, skin red as if badly sunburned, yet they hadn't been in the sun. Some could barely walk. The doctors were baffled. Smoke inhalation, chemical exposure. They treated the symptoms as best they could. Nothing seemed to help. Throughout the city, people noticed an unusual number of military vehicles driving slowly through the streets. Men in unfamiliar uniforms walked around pointing instruments at buildings, at trees, at the ground. Their faces were hidden behind masks. Most residents assumed it was a drill, some kind of training exercise at the nearby power plant. Life continued as normal. By afternoon, unease began to spread. Children complained of headaches. Some had slight fevers. Parents dismissed it as too much sun, or maybe a spring cold going around. Workers at the power plant were kept on extended shifts. When their families called asking when they'd be home, the answers were vague. "Soon. We're handling something. Everything's fine." But the tone in their voices suggested otherwise. The wedding by the river continued. Music played. People danced. The bride and groom cut their cake, while the strange glow from the plant shimmered faintly in the distance, visible even in daylight. At one apartment building, a woman hung laundry on her balcony. She noticed the clothes felt warm, even in the shade. Strange. A father playing with his son in the park suddenly felt nauseous. He sat down, suddenly unsteady. "Are you okay?" his son asked. "Just tired," the father said. "Let's go home." Phone lines buzzed. People called relatives in other cities, asking if they'd heard anything about an accident. The answers were always the same. Nothing on the news. No announcements. Whatever happened must not be serious. Meanwhile, on rooftops near the plant, chunks of debris continued to smolder. Some pieces had melted straight through tar and roofing material. They glowed faintly in the daylight. Nobody thought to look up. That night, unease turned into quiet dread. Families gathered in their apartments, curtains drawn. Still, they couldn't help glancing toward the windows. The glow was still there, brighter somehow. Helicopters flew back and forth, their silhouettes cutting across the strange light. What were they doing? One neighbor stood on his balcony, watching. "It's beautiful," he said to his wife, "like a sunset that never ends." His wife didn't think it was beautiful. She thought it looked wrong. Children tossed and turned in their beds, feverish. Parents gave them water and aspirin, reassuring them it was nothing serious. In the morning, they'd feel better. Some workers finally returned home from the plant. They were exhausted, pale. They stripped off their clothes immediately, saying they smelled strange, chemical, burnt. Their families asked what had happened. "There was a fire," one said. "An explosion. They say it's under control now." "Should we be worried?" The workers didn't answer right away. Some suggested quietly that their families pack a small bag, just in case. The radio played music, weather forecasts, sports scores, nothing about an accident. At the hospital, more people arrived. Plant workers, residents from nearby neighborhoods, all with the same symptoms: nausea, vomiting, skin reddening. The hospital began running out of beds. One doctor pulled a colleague aside. "This doesn't make sense," he said. "These symptoms, it's like they've been exposed to something they couldn't see." Across the city, people lay awake, listening to helicopters, watching the glow, wondering what was happening. Nobody slept well that night. Sunday morning arrived with loudspeakers. "Attention! Attention, residents!" People rushed to their windows. Due to the accident at the power station, a temporary evacuation is being organized. The voice was calm, almost casual. "This is a precautionary measure only." Hearts pounded. "Please take essential documents and items for 3 days. 3 days. You will be able to return shortly." The city erupted into controlled chaos. Families poured into the streets carrying small bags. Children clutched favorite toys. Elderly neighbors were helped down stairwells. Pets were left behind. There wasn't room on the buses. One woman hesitated at her doorway. She looked back at her apartment. Wedding photos on the wall. Her daughter's artwork on the refrigerator. She almost went back for them. But they said 3 days. She'd be back in 3 days. She closed the door. Buses lined every street. Hundreds of them. An endless convoy stretching farther than anyone could see. The loading was orderly. People helped each other. Some joked nervously. Others stared ahead in silence. As the buses pulled away, faces pressed against the windows, watching their city shrink behind them. The apartment buildings, the schools, the brand new amusement park, the bright yellow Ferris wheel, still waiting for its first riders. One child asked her mother, "When are we coming back?" "Soon," she said. "Very soon." From a distance, the city looked peaceful, perfect. Nothing seemed wrong at all. 3 days passed, then a week. Then the waiting stopped feeling temporary. The call never came. Instead, pieces of the truth began to surface. Quietly at first. Rumors, leaks, half-denials. A word people didn't want to say out loud. Radiation, invisible, silent, already inside them. They thought back to that Saturday. Children digging in sandboxes. The wedding by the river. People standing on balconies, breathing deeply. The firefighters who arrived first, began dying within days. The workers who stayed at the facility lost their hair. Their skin blistered and peeled. Doctors realized too late that every treatment they gave had been guesswork. What exploded wasn't just machinery. It was the core itself, a reactor torn open. Material so dangerous that a single breath was enough. Dust no one could see settled into homes, into clothing, into lungs. And for 36 hours, the city was allowed to live normally. Months later, the evacuees learned the truth. Their city hadn't been destroyed. It had been erased from time. Apartments still stood. Toys lay on bedroom floors. Meals sat where they'd been left. Laundry hung untouched on lines. They were told 3 days. They never went back. The power station was nuclear. The city was Pripyat. And the name the world eventually gave that night was Chernobyl. The Ferris wheel never opened. The wedding photos never came down. The playgrounds were never used again. To this day, the city remains sealed inside an exclusion zone, standing, intact, empty. For the people who lived there was no warning, no sirens, just a strange glow in the night sky. And by the time they understood what it meant, their lives had already ended the way they knew them.